If there's one thing you can count on from Rockin Android, it's their knack for bringing over enjoyable Doujin titles straight from Japan. Earlier this season, we took a look at Marsbound's Cloudphobia, and we dug it quite a bit. But never once to rest on their laurels, Rockin Android was quick to release another new side-scroller in the form of Diadra Empty.
Created by Japanese indie studio Frozen Orb in 2008, Diadra Empty is the story of a young girl, Nyalra, in search of her sister Diadra with the help of her companion dragon, Minimi, and combines free-roaming side-scrolling shooting with action RPG elements. This one has a bit of a familiar feel to it. Let's take a closer look.
Diadra Empty neatly implements RPG-style leveling with experience, which will, over time, make Nyalra stronger, but at its core, Diadra Empty has a very strong defender vibe to it, albeit in a much more advanced way. But unlike the narrow stages of the 1980 classic, the stages in Diadra are actually so large vertically that it's often difficult to know what's going on above or below the visible screen. To help players out, there's a radar panel on the bottom of the screen that shows where the stage's opposition lies, as well as the visible area within the stage.
White indicators show where enemies are appearing on the stage, while red markers show the enemies themselves. Meanwhile, green shows the position of experience orbs and blue represents you and your shots. In many ways, Diadra Empty is more of an arena shooter than your typical horizontal one, thanks to the scope of the playfield and the seemingly distant vertical and horizontal stage limits.
The 8-way control here feels pretty good in game and allows for fairly easy navigation versus some of the more intense bullet patterns you'll be up against. But since the opposition is coming from, well, everywhere, there are a number of ways to more easily deal with your foes when it comes to firing in a specific direction.
In terms of firepower, players select both a regular shot and a separate shot which is fired while turbo is enabled. Option patterns and additional abilities are also selected on the outset of the game, and more abilities can be unlocked by leveling up. Much like Cave's Death Smiles, you can fire your weapon both to the left and to the right. Typically your fire hinges on the direction you're moving, which is where the strafe function comes into play.
By pressing the assigned key or button, you'll be able to lock your fire in a specific direction independent of your movement. The strafe has 3 different modes, which are selected when you set up your controls. Toggle will lock strafing on until the strafe button is pressed again. Hold strafe so long as the strafe button is engaged, and side shoot maps left and right fire to specific buttons, Death Smile style. But each control option does require a bit of fiddling in the options menu. The toggle and hold options are best suited to a shoulder button, while the side shot is best placed on a face button or either side of the dash key.
You'll also have access to a bomber attack called the Storm Saver, which will greatly enhance your speed and firepower while absorbing all of the experience on the playfield. The Storm Saver is especially effective against boss enemies since it will nullify all shots on the playfield as well. It can also be very useful in grabbing huge swaths of experience that might be too far to snag.
The BSS maneuver, which is performed by holding the bomb button down, will cause defeated foes to drop blue coins, which is used towards life recovery at the cost of a Storm Saver. By going turbo, you can also snag yellow and green coins as well. This can also be done at the expense of experience if no Storm Savers remain though, but could be the key to a higher score. In regards to the enemy bullets themselves, there are 2 different types, lasers which cannot be destroyed, and smaller chip type bullets which can be cleared with a certain type of shot enhancement which is unlocked at a certain level. Finally, there will definitely be times when you need to get out of the way of a barrage of enemy death without wanting to waste a Storm Saver. That's where the Turbo Dash comes in. When using the Turbo Dash, your speed will be greatly enhanced as long as the button or key is pressed. On the outset, you'll also be briefly invincible, allowing for a smooth exit to a hairy situation. Of course, enabling the cave-style slowdown in the 60 FPS fix keeps things pretty manageable. But you can really make things fly by turning it all off and having crap fly around at over 200 frames per second. Yikes!
All of this actually works out pretty smoothly when it all comes together. Of course, the more experience and coins you collect, the better, since new abilities are unlocked the higher you go, making repeat plays worthwhile. Between each stage, you can use collected coins to upgrade shot levels, add options for additional firepower, or boost your speed level up. In addition, harder difficulties also open up once the main story is completed, which also adds to the replay.
The scoring in Diadra Empty has a couple of hooks that keep it from falling into complete mediocrity. For one, you can get a decent bonus from collecting as many drop coins as possible from your defeated opposition. In addition, using the BSS ability will enable a multiplier that boosts the value of downed enemies.
There are still end-stage bonuses though, such as the amount of time taken and coins collected. But there are also really huge bonuses for enabling top-level abilities, like maxing your speed, weapon power, or option count.
All told, there isn't really a lot to take into consideration when playing for a high score. Just collect as much as you can and keep your shield count and storm saver stock as high as possible without having to continue. Same goes for experience. The more you collect, the higher the level, the more options that are available on the outset of your next play. Kills, coins, grazing bullets, time, info, and much more all come together to form your endgame score, not unlike Magical Chase, but all in all, it's a pretty slow burn. Diadra Empty could make up for its slightly weak scoring with its decent presentation. Part of the grand scale in this game comes from the use of tiny sprites, allowing for hundreds of enemies in the level at once. But these sprites are often very detailed, evidenced by the way your dragon looks around and surveys its surroundings while Niaura pats it on the head. The bosses are suitably epic, and stuff blows up rather well.
Some of the environments here are pretty awesome as well, and really creates an effective atmosphere for the stage you're playing through. Snow, fog, and other atmospheric effects combined with some pretty amazing vistas make Diadra Empty a very nice game to look at.
It's not without its problems though. There will be times when you'll be able to see graphical tears around some of the larger shots that are fired by larger enemies. There was also an awful lot of flicker as well, which seems kind of odd for a game that can consistently run at 250 frames per second on my machine. The enemies could have used way more animation too, especially the bosses.
Thankfully, the sound picks up a bit of the slack. Most of the OST here is actually pretty well produced and ends up being quite enjoyable throughout, but a couple of the stages could have used a bit more in the music department. The sound effects are also very well produced, with nothing that really stands out of place, save for the chirping of your dragon. It often sounds like it's getting hurt, but it isn't.
So, on the whole, how does Diadra Empty stack up? Let's take a look. Fast and fairly precise, Diadra's control works rather well once you find a decent control scheme that works best for you.
The control here was pretty fluid for me. While it does take a bit of getting used to, it doesn't take long to get the hang of things.
Diadra Empty will make things hard for you when it comes to a 1cc on higher difficulties. It's a fun kind of challenge though.
Things can get pretty hairy with some of the intense enemy waves and near impenetrable fire.
At 8 stages is a decent amount to play through here, but gathering levels and unlocking new abilities gives Diadra staying power.
Some of the stages seem to drag a bit, but overall the pacing was pretty good.
Tiny details in the smallish sprites isn't lost, but the enemies need more animation. Flickers and tears harsh on a pretty good vibe though.
The creature design here is really impressive, and the sprites are detailed enough, but the creatures could have been more animated.
The OST is pretty good for most of the game, but some of the stages are lacking in the BGM department.
I didn't find the music too engaging, and while the dragons sounded adorable, I don't really expect my dragons to sound like squeaky toys.
This is basically Defender on steroids, but the RPG elements are a neat twist. In the end, it could almost be a side-scrolling Panzer Dragoon, if you squint.
Having never played Defender or anything else like the 1980 classic, I felt that Diadra Empty was quite fresh, and if nothing else, is a clean modern take on a golden oldie.
All in all, Rockin Android has done it again, delivering a fun side-scroller to the Western market that should entertain PC Doujin shmuppers for hours. Diadra Empty gets a 4 out of 5. Like many of Rockin Android's other recent releases, Diadra Empty is available now on Desura, Amazon, and Gamersgate for just $5.99. It's also available in the UK via Rice Digital for just £3.99. A fair price for quite the decent game.